Hello, this is Kris Nelson for evolveconsciousness.org. I will be reading the article Worldview and Choices, Self-Knowledge Barriers Part 1. This was written at the end of December, published on December 24th, 2013. So, worldview and the choices we make. The way we see ourselves, the world, and other beings is part of the root causal problem. This has been briefly introduced with the concept of axioms that shape our way of living. Our perceptions are being manipulated to construct an unrealistic, illusory way of living that is not in harmony with natural law. Worldview shapes the way we manifest consciousness in our lives. What we spend time on and what we pay attention to is what we think about, and that affects the way we feel and act. How and what we think affects our perception of ourselves and the external reality. This understanding does not mean to only look at the positive while ignoring the negative in ourselves. In the world or ourselves. Our minds and hearts have fallen into darkness to produce the conditions we see manifested by our collective behavior. The negative effects, symptoms, and problems that we are collectively co-creating need to be recognized. Understanding the root causal factors of how and why our current condition is happening puts us in a position to act in a way that is different to produce a different result, because we know and truly understand how not to produce the same result. Solutions to a problem require an accurate, honest assessment to determine the actual nature of the problem by facing the truth, both positive and negative, even if it makes us uncomfortable. Why are we experiencing this current condition? How are we being deceived and manipulated? How important is truth? What are the motivational factors that drive certain behavior? Making decisions based on a lack of knowledge and understanding is rooted in a state of internal confusion whereby we do not understand foundational principal root causal factors, so we continue to perpetuate more of the same because we do not recognize that our actions are based on a lack of understanding. If proper, accurate, correct understanding is reached, then our decisions will not create more of the same. Our choices will not be based on confusion from lack of information, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, but will be based on truth of the reality and these foundational root causal factors that will allow us to see things clearly and not make decisions that lead to the same results. Here's a quote by R. Buckminster Fuller. In order to change an existing paradigm, you do not struggle to try and change the problematic model. You create a new model and make the old one obsolete. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. That's a quote by Socrates. And here we have a quote by Albert Einstein. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking that created them. So this is essentially all saying, stop working on the current problems and trying to make them better. You got to think of a new way of living that isn't based on false foundational axioms that will actually create the results you want. Because right now, trying to rework the same problematic system that creates the same results will only create the same results in an altered form, because you're only altering the system a bit. If you completely change the way of life, then you're going to get completely different results. That's why we need a new way of living. To think that we can fix things by becoming part of an institution of control, such as government, police, military, banking, religion, etc., is an action based in confusion. A person can have good intentions in following one of the pre-selected paths that are part of the problem, yet think it will create solutions. Doing the same things again and expecting different results is not productive. As the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Basing decisions on lack of critical knowledge and understanding is ignorance of the root causal factors and acting in confusion to try to manifest what we want or wish to have. Supporting controlling institutions to control others is not the solution. Education out of darkness by bringing clarity of understanding is part of the solution. People often want to be part of something greater than themselves. It gives one a greater sense of purpose. Our beliefs and faith in something can be misplaced by the definitions and meanings we have associated, related, and identified with our so-called higher purpose. We will be very content with continuing to believe in such a construct. This is how most institutions work: military, police, religion, government, etc. People give of themselves to be part of a greater, higher purpose, or so they believe it to be. Many people can't discern what truth from fiction is, and end up giving of themselves to false institutions, believing that they are a part of a greater, higher good. There's a quote by Carl Sagan. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has corrupted us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. And he's talking about mind control, about how we can't admit that we're wrong, because it's so painful to admit that we're wrong and we've been fooled, and we've been living our whole lives as a fool. Living your whole life as a fool. You've been a fool your whole life, but you can't admit it, because you're still a fool. And you can't look at yourself in the mirror honestly. So then you keep giving your power away. You keep giving your power away. It keeps going away from you. And you wonder why, what's going on? Why am I being controlled? Why don't I have any power? Well, you keep giving it away because you don't want to learn about yourself. You don't want to develop self-responsibility. You don't want to take your power back. You don't want to respect yourself. You don't want to self-love. You don't want to be responsible. So what happens? Well, you give your power away. You want to be ignorant? You give your power away. You want to be fooled and bamboozled, tricked, hoodwinked, screwed, manipulated? Well, then you give your power away. Knowledge, learning, seek, care for truth and morality. That is the way out. There are always aspects of truth mixed into the control structure to make you believe it is for good. These are illusions and attachment to them. People will be in denial, not wanting to admit they are deceived, manipulated, fooled, tricked, duped, conned, scammed, screwed, bamboozled, hoodwinked, lied to, that they made a mistake, that they were unaware, uninformed, and most of all, wrong. So instead of course correction, they continue down the path to self-created suffering and keep everyone down by their ignorance and denial. People want to do good, they truly do, but they lack the ability to discern what is good. They don't trust themselves enough or don't want to take the time it takes to discover. And so get led down the false path. Only by addressing the root of the problem and correcting the source cause that is responsible for creating the condition we experience will we be able to effectively change things for the good. We are required to let go of attachments to false beliefs and illusions that lead us on erroneous paths. The next section is Align Perceptions with Reality. This is an infographic I remade based on Mark Passio's Truth and Frequency of Perception, Aligning Perceptions with Reality infographic. So you have the truth as a constant, as an absolute, and you have perception or consciousness or understanding of reality. You can look at it in different ways. That frequents the constant of truth less frequently in red, more frequently in green, or even more frequently in blue. So the more contact you have with truth, the more your perception is in alignment with reality, which is what the truth is, it's reality. And the more your consciousness will evolve by understanding reality accurately and not inventing delusions to believe in. This graph is originally made by Mark Passio, and I have remade it with some additions. Our perceptions can be in low frequencies due to limited alignment with the truth. Our perceptions do not intersect with the truth frequently enough, so we have a low frequency of perception. The truth and understanding of reality we gain by aligning our perceptions with and seeing reality as it is increases the frequency of interaction with the truth in our lives, but also increases the frequency of our being. The more our perceptions align with the truth, the higher our frequency of functionality with universe and reality will be. The more our frequency of perception and being attunes to the basis of truth and reality, the higher our frequency of being becomes, expanding our consciousness, which is the true force of love. At first, we may not have an accurate perception and understanding of reality. Our conscious awareness is low, and therefore our level of consciousness is low. As we align our perceptions with reality, truth, what is, we increase our conscious awareness of reality, and we expand our consciousness, which is love, which is the force of love. Increasing consciousness and love is done by less wavering from the truth and instead more resonance and alignment with it. Here's a quote by Travis Walton. I've come to realize that the biggest problem anywhere in the world is that people's perceptions of reality are compulsively filtered through the screening mesh of what they want and do not want to be true. That ties into the quote by Sagan on being bamboozled and it's too painful to acknowledge. People don't want to admit when they're wrong. Then they have to admit that they were fooled, that they are a fool, that they are living a fool's life. People, it's all ego. It's all failure to face themselves in the mirror. They don't have the self-love to face themselves in the hard ways that matter. It's all fantasy, illusionary, unreality living. All pleasure trap gratification. Enjoy life, and there you go. Dysfunctional beliefs and cognitive distortions are possible because we choose to accept falsities, deceptions, and illusions that sound good as an explanation, or allow us to feel good about ourselves or our current way of living. Our perceptions, beliefs, and worldview should align, harmonize, unite with the truth of what is occurring, both around and within us, so that we have the ability to respond from a place of understanding what is happening. The nature of the problem lies at the level of belief. Belief is the foremost causal factor underlying what we experience. We believe in falsehoods and reject truth. If our view of ourselves is based in indoctrination, tacitly assumed to be valid, or influenced by dysfunctional interconnected beliefs, we are not following our true desires of what we want to live by and uphold in our lives. If we claim to be for nonviolence and not doing harm, yet we have been conditioned into engaging in such behavior without recognizing it for what it is, without truly being consciously aware of what we do, then these conditioned beliefs are preventing us from actualizing the core desires we want to live by. We are failing to live up to how we want to live our lives because we are not aware or unwilling to face the reality of our condition we find ourselves in. Conscious awareness of ourselves and reality can be increased so that we become more aware of what we think, feel, and do. The biggest reason for not changing is the feel-good about ourselves comfort of thinking the way we are and the way and what we do is great, perfect, and good, and doesn't need to change. So we always feel good about ourselves because we think everything's good and it doesn't need to change. So then why change? Why admit we're wrong when everything's already good? We're already perfect and everything's great. There's no need to change. No need to admit that I'm wrong, that I've been fooled, that I am a fool, that I'm living a fool's life, that I'm living in falsity. There's no need for any of that. Because I lie to myself every day and I feel good about myself, so I don't need to face the mirror. Problem solved. We like to believe what we do is good and that we don't do wrong, so there is no need to change anything since we are not doing any wrong. The realization of the truth about ourselves and how we behave is the first step of becoming uncomfortable about what we actually do and our current state condition, and then progressing towards self-improvement and change. I have a picture here, and it's of the brain. Unfortunately, this is how the brain works. And we have a cell speaking to another boss cell in charge. It says, "Sir, we are receiving information that conflicts with the core belief system." And then the man in charge says, "Get rid of it." So this is how cognitive dissonance works. Is there's something that contradicts with what you already accept. And instead of looking into it, instead of being curious, doubting, and asking questions, you just dismiss it and you ignore it. So you can keep doing what you're already doing, keep perpetuating the same thing, never actually changing anything, because you don't want to face yourself. You don't want to be uncomfortable. You want to maintain that comfort level so that no change is required. Because if you're uncomfortable, then you're going to seek to relieve that discomfort. And that's why the discomfort, the negative emotions are required. Anger, shame, guilt, blame, all of these things are essential for correcting our wrongdoings. Anyone who wants to deny these aspects of anger, shame, guilt, and blame is living a delusional life, a delusional self-image, a delusional construct of how life works and how to actually achieve goodness. We like to think we uphold what is true, what is right and good, and by extension that makes us true, right, and good. We are faced with the conflict, when we are faced with the conflict of how we perceive ourselves to be in alignment with the beliefs we want to live by, and the actual actions, behaviors, and habits we engage in, it creates cognitive dissonance where two conflicting beliefs cannot be mutually held in harmony, in unison, in integrity, in coherence. These two conflicting beliefs create internal conflict, internal opposition, and we often rely on denial, which is avoidance coping, to excuse, justify, and reason our current way of living as true, valid, correct, accurate, right, and good, because we like to see ourselves that way and don't like to admit to ourselves that we aren't 100% perfect and will never be. It is much easier to stay living a certain way that we are already doing and not admitting to be wrong, unaware, uninformed, manipulated, etc., which would present us with the opportunity for change, betterment, improvement, and personal evolution. The security of believing the current conditioning and way we are living is far too comforting and provides the mindset to feel good about our current lives. In avoiding the true source of the reason we do things, it allows us to attempt to protect ourselves from psychological damage. That is to say, cognitive dissonance kicks in order to protect us from having to deal with the uncomfortable nature of the conflict between our beliefs and reality. That we'd have to deal with changing, so it's much easier to just kick it to the side and forget about it. People believe in things that are not there, illusions. Our society is founded on sleight of hand magical trickery. Passing a law is sorcery. Something is wished into existence like a magician who pulls a rabbit out of a hat. If we want to believe that is what happened, then we believe it. If we know there is another explanation, we can sense something is not right, even though it appears to have happened. Illusions of sorcery appear to be real until we know how they work. Being tricked and fooled by sorcery modifies our behavior in alignment with the belief we now accept. This is the spell that is cast upon us. Belief constructs are manifested into existence at the whim of a pen or spoken word. We then accept them and conform to them as we live our lives in these illusory constructs. Truth unites, lies divide. Love embraces truth, fear rejects truth. There is an effort to promote spiritual unity by respecting everyone's beliefs. This has not achieved unity, but has created separate fantasies for everyone to remain attached to as part of their identity. To be unified requires being on the same page of understanding basic truths, not beliefs that make us comfortable and feel good in contradiction to what is. Common ground is what unites. Believing in fantasy illusions and deceptions is not the basis for unity. Consider if you would want to be friends with a psychopath or a serial killer. Would you trust your child with them? That was an extreme example, but it illustrates that the more of a divergence in our values and ways of living, the less common ground there is to develop strong bonds in a relationship. There are extreme worldview illusions that create a divergence in ways of living and understanding truths. So there's many illusions that prevent us from living in cohesive, coherent ways because All of these illusions have us acting in many false ways, in immoral ways of various degrees, in evil ways of various degrees. So we can't unite with each other because we're all in various levels of moral alignment, and those who are at different levels of moral alignment can't unite with those at those at the same level of moral alignment can unite, but they can't unite with those at different levels of moral alignment. That's why it's not based on blind spiritual unity. Spirituality is morality, so spiritual unity has everything to do with morality, so therefore the only way to have true spiritual unity is to have a unity based on a moral foundation, which is the moral baseline, which is veganism. It's all logic. It's all very simple. Another section, false dichotomy or dilemma. A false dilemma or dichotomy is black and white thinking that creates false limitations in choice where there are indeed other options available. This is not to say there are no solutions where there are indeed limited choices. The false dichotomy setup can be done with two or more options that try to limit possibilities of other choices or actions taking place. This can be expressed by people who may not be aware of what they are doing. Having someone accept a false dichotomy and forcing them to choose between limited possibilities that you control at the outset is employed in many ways. In the film The Last Boy Scout, the main character asks people head or gut, because they are either getting punched in the head or in the gut. You can ask someone, do you want to get slapped with the right hand or the left hand? It doesn't matter what they choose, they are getting slapped either way. You can ask a child if they want to eat carrots or peas for supper. Either way, they are going to eat the vegetables that they don't want to eat. Presenting a choice, no matter how false or illusory it is much more appealing than being forced in a direction that is already predetermined. When someone believes they have the power to make a choice in their lives, they think they are free, and this makes them happy to have some form of control over what goes on in their lives. This can lead people to believe there are only certain choices one can make in life. Other ways of living, deciding, and behaving are ruled out of our imagination that would allow us to conceive of another way that might be better in which to live. A false dichotomy presents an illusion of choice between limited possibilities in order to constrict a person's consciousness and imagination from envisioning and choosing other possibilities. One of the most effective false dichotomy deceptions employed consistently across the planet is that of voting. Politics is based in deception on many levels, and voting is the biggest trick to get people to think they have control and power over what goes on in their lives. People like to believe that voting makes them responsible and good citizens. Voting is an abdication of personal responsibility in which you allow someone to represent you instead of you presenting yourself as a self-governed, self-ruled, self-realized sovereign being. People hop around or stay dogmatically allied to one party or another, and round it goes in a circle because we believe it works and we are helping to create change and betterment. When in actuality the change is more of our freedoms are eroded and more control is implemented. People don't want the responsibility of true freedom. They want to give away their responsibility to others and think they will be free. Animals can be trained in a similar way, such as with positive or negative reinforcement behavioral conditioning. This applies to all animals, human animals and non-human animals. Specific events are repeated, eliciting certain choices and patterns of behavior that become conditioned. We believe doing certain things is good for us because it will get us the result we wish and want. This has been conditioned into us. Understanding how this operates and being able to implement false dichotomies places a manipulator in an advantageous position to carry out mind control. Imagine what is possible with our true potential in freeing ourselves from the various forms of mind control that keep our minds and hearts limited and disunited. Life and the way of living of everyone on this planet can be different, but we are holding ourselves back by buying into a fear-based consciousness of thinking the answer is with external control. Society promotes the current control structure through the news, television series, movies, education, literature, newspaper, etc. The dark occultists and controllers are speaking their version of reality into existence for others to believe in, which we accept, and we live within the parameters set forth by those who dictate the illusory reality. Next section is worldview extremes of randomness and determinism. Randomness and determinism are both based in the illusory polarity of fear. Randomness is the left brain imbalance that holds mostly left brain based ways of being with barely any use of right brain modalities of thought. Intellect can be strong in left brain imbalance, such as with some scientists, doctors, lawyers, mathematicians, etc. Overuse of the left brain modalities dampens the use of the right brain modalities, which suffer from lack of usage. Living and being driven purely by the physical five-sense only worldview is a left brain imbalance. Most of society is geared towards left brain development, with right brain modalities suffering. A randomness worldview involves believing the universe is an accident arriving from an infinitesimal singularity for no reason. There is no underlying intelligence in nature but random principles coming together. Natural law does not exist. We don't create through what we choose to do. There is no spiritual reality. Existence is purposeless other than to continue existence, and that means survival is the only point, which is pretty circular for the purpose to exist. You exist to continue to exist. Yay. This type of thinking is the basis for atheism and scientism, worshipping at the altar of science as the be-all and end-all of the explanation to all things, and also the basis for solipsism, where nothing can be known. Scientism is a limiting worldview based on the five-sense perceptions and the technological instruments we use to extend our ability to perceive the physical reality. Everything is a dead machine of parts with a little bit of life on Earth. Viewing the universe and our bodies in a mechanical way is a limiting worldview from outdated Newtonian science. Scientism is believing everything can be explained through the five-sense perceptions, while solipsism is believing only one's perceptions are reality. Both are ideologies where man determines truth, and this leads to moral relativism. You're going to be a dictator of truth, the god and arbiter of truth, and you're going to decide what's moral, because there is no objective morality. You make it up. Believing there is no objective truth, that there is no this or that, is what leads to moral relativism of no right or wrong. This belief justifies having total freedom to do whatever we want based on our perceptions, comfort level, and way of seeing the world. There is no acceptance of objective moral principles. What feels good to our five-sense illusion is good, regardless if another being is harmed. This leads to playing God with the lives of others as masters and controllers. Determinism is a right brain imbalance where left brain modalities of thinking dampen and suffer from infrequent use. It is often demonstrated by a lack of attention to the physical world and focusing on matters of another realm. Right brain determinism consists in believing God controls every event in creation, all occurrences are preordained, free will does not exist, and change is impossible, and action is meaningless. God is viewed as involved and in control of everything, responsible for making the universe continually function like clockwork. Free will does not exist, as decisions are determined by the will of God. Instead of the randomness of no overriding natural law in our lives, determinism negates free will to uphold a conception of natural law where change is impossible. It is all preordained by God. It tends to lead to accepting the will of authority. Extreme determinism from chronic right brain worldview and modalities of thinking can manifest in lack of a measure of emotional control. Many people who think in such ways are found within religious extremism. All events happen whether we want them to or not. We can't take the reins of reality and change direction. We are puppets without free will. That's what they believe, or variations of that, in a deterministic mindset. Even people who don't believe in this, people who know change is possible, action is meaningful, free will does exist, occurrences aren't preordained, and God doesn't control everything. If someone believes that they need to focus on other realms instead of the physical world and being on the ground, if they want to focus on meditation, astral projection, remote viewing, channeling, contacting other entities, they're completely lost in space and they don't understand the work that is required on the ground. And they are in right brain imbalance. Many people like that on Facebook who think they're truthers and they're awake. Accepting any of the characteristics of either of these worldviews does not help us to reach the potential for our evolution and in our journey to increase, expand, and evolve consciousness. They are not based in the expansive force of love. They do not lead to freedom, peace, harmony, or anything uplifting and good. Those who base their way of living by accepting such ways of viewing reality will not produce the experience and results that are based in the force of love. These are belief systems and are not based in natural law principles of truth. Balancing the left and right modalities of consciousness in the way we live, think, and feel, and behave prevents us from living in the extremities of randomness and determinism. Randomness does not understand the underlying principles in the universe that will allow us to achieve what we work towards if our thoughts, emotions, and actions are in unison and harmony with truth. Determinism establishes everything as predetermined and controlled, where we are supplicant to a higher authority that we should fear. We don't have free will to create what we experience. Reality exists as a synthesis of the two principles each ideology rejects: the random component of free will and the deterministic component of natural law. And that's how it works together. It's not either or, it's both together. And this also ties into a dualistic conceptual framework, where I'm just going to give an example of how a duality can be completely misperceived. They're looking at determinism of natural law, laws in the universe, like gravity. That's determinate. It's constant. And then they look at free will, and they're going to play them against each other as if they both can't exist at the same time. That's a false, dualistic, conceptual framework. There's two different types. They don't apply blanketly across everywhere. It's not either or in every single case. This is an example of an either or being conceived of incorrectly. It's not either or. It is a dualistic conceptual framework with degrees and ranges in between, and a balance. This is also another place where there's accurate balance and then there's false balance. You know, people blindly apply balance, the concept of balance in everything, and then they blindly apply the concept of either or dualism in everything. They don't understand how everything in reality needs to be taken case by case to actually discern the truth in it. It's not just blind analogies and correspondences to be applied in order to discern truth. No, those are indications for a possible truth to be discovered through a correspondence between one thing and another. Anyways, to continue, our choices and decisions based in the force of love or fear determines the quality of our experience. We can align with truth and natural law to create freedom and peace, or we can choose not to align with these foundational principles and experience more enslavement and suffering. Free will and natural law can be understood by recognizing it in operation throughout history, the present, and what will be, which is the future. We are all bound by our free will decisions and those of others. If our goal is to align free will with natural law foundational principles that are in operation for our own benefit, betterment, and edification, then we will create freedom, harmony, peace, and order. We will continue to co-create self-inflicted suffering as long as we don't learn the lesson. That's the end of this article. on worldview and the choices we make. The next one will be Admit Wrong and Imagine Better. Self-Knowledge Barriers Part 2, which is related to this, as this is all about how we can't admit wrong and we're not able to face the truth, so we need to admit wrong and then imagine better so that we can create a better future for ourselves. Thank you very much for your time and attention. This is Kris Nelson for evolvedconsciousness.org. Have a nice day. Take care. Peace.